Awesome. You did it right. When you're doing these like on the bench, and if you have multiples and you're upgrading a whole bunch and they're all brand new, they're all going to boot up as FPP. All right. So when you use your phone or your laptop, does anybody not know the application Fing? F-I-N-G. It's a great little tool that you download onto your phone and you attach to your Wi-Fi. So if you can't remember an IP address or something or DHCP of something, it will go ahead and locate, and it will show up as Raspberry Pi with a an IP address, and then you can go onto it like that. But it's a network scanner. Yeah, F-I-N-G. It's a great little tool. Works well, and if you're trying to find something on your network, like you just installed a bulb that you got from Dale, or a little Wi-Fi camera or something like that, you can find out what the IP address is after it connects to your network.
It is free, even though they try to sell it to you. So
oh yeah,
don't buy it. It's there. It's free.
Yeah, it's full of ads and everything. Just don't click on them. So once it's installed, it is broadcasting a network called FPP with the password Christmas with a capital C. It is case sensitive, and then it will allow you to connect. If you connect, I think only on a phone, once you connect to it, especially on the Mac, it will take you automatically to the main page. If you're on your phone, it'll go to the main page, because the base IP address of a brand new one is 192.168.8.1. Okay. Beagles have an additional one. If you are tethered over a data USB to a BeagleBone to your computer, you can actually connect to it. It opens up a USB network interface to your computer, and you can go to 192.168.7.1, and it will go over the USB, and then you can make your changes and adjustments. So it's validating our install right there. So I do not recommend you upgrade them all, reboot them all, because when you connect to FPP, you won't know which one of these you are actually connected to. All right, so only turn one on at a time, and then that's where we'll be here in about 10 seconds.
So the password was Christmas with a capital
With a capital C, correct. All right. Yep.
If we're setting up an FPP versus I'm sure I don't have the right term, the remote out in the yard that's going to listen to the main controller, is it the same FPP program? It's just a setting within?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. But you'll want to name them obviously differently. So, all right, we have imaged this, and with Dale's permission, I'll apply power and not let the magic smoke out. Oh, it spins up. Yes?
What is the reason for having multiple pies? I mean,
There's use cases for a lot.
I got one in a matrix, another in a matrix,
Do you only need one? Yes, you can run a show off of one.
and one is a backup.
If you have P5 panels, P10 panels, it requires some sort of interface, and you can drive them directly off of a Pi as well. I'm just unplugging these because I forget if one of these is just FPP.
There's only one out
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, you only need one.
Help it.
Okay, so we are going to connect to our FPP instance, hopefully, and it's the one that we just connected to. And, all right, this is the default screen. So once you connect, it is the FPP. Password. Again, this is for if you want to SSH. Does anybody not know what SSH is? SSH is a secure Linux connection that you go through a terminal screen, much like this. So, SSH FTP at level leave this on Europe time zone, and we wanted our show to start at 5 o'clock or 1700, what time would it actually start? About 10 o'clock in the morning. Because it goes by the time zone of the actual machine. So, oh, the locale? Okay, cool. Oh, good, but it doesn't change this. Oh, but it's probably not because we're not on a network. Yeah. So, America? Oh, there we are. US. Oh, right? And you can see lately, anytime that you change something, if it doesn't change, leave the field because that's when it triggers the change. When you see the little green bubble that appears on the right hand up here, and you can see it's like, okay, finish setup, basic configuration change, reboot required. You can click on finish setup. Cool. Yep. Oh, good point. Yeah, because mountain covers a bit. Yeah, good point. Everybody hear that? If you want to use sunrise and sunset in your schedule, set your actual longitude. Yeah. So, here in a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and reboot this. All right? We're rebooting it, yeah. Correct. You change the locale. It needs to change a lot of base layer things. And also, on a Pi 3, Pi 4, you can plug this into an HDMI monitor and it will boot up, and then you'll see when it's actually running. And if you have a speaker plugged in or whatever, it'll say, I have the following IP address, 192.168.8.1. And then you can use that and connect to it. Right? I'm giving you the defaults that it should allow you to connect to it. So the FPP default Christmas password, and the IP address is 192.168.8.1. Okay. Yep. So, all right. My computer reconnected, and it brought me right back to the screen. So if you're really patient, your computer may reconnect, or if you reconnect manually, it should bring you back to the screen. That's not it. I'm connected to a different one. Which one am I? Where is that one running? Oh, this one. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. There we go. All right. Now we're on the screen. Next step, storage. We used a 32 gig SD card, but the image that we downloaded from Belina was only 1 gig. So it's treating that whole 32 gig card like 1 gig. It just put everything over that. And now what we're going to do is tell it we want to expand the file system. So you click here on Grow File System. Yes. And it's going to do a couple of things. It says, okay, please reboot again. Yes. Okay. Grow file system. Yep. if you'll turn, Todd, if you'll unplug that one just temporarily, and when this one is renamed. So we're going to do another reboot because we grew the file system, and then after that you can start doing other config changes like configuring the P5 panel, color light card, uploading from Xlights. It will be discoverable in Xlights if it's on your network, etc. Is yours powered on default too? Just pause for really quick. Yep. Okay. Yeah, just don't boot it up quite yet until I make one more change. So. Should pop up there. Ah, here it is. Yes, sir. Okay. Yep. Okay. So now the system is ready to be configured. What is the next thing that we should do? Change the access point from FPP to something else. Even though we called it FPP Dale, that's just the name on the network. So if this were to join your network on the Ethernet or over Wi-Fi, it would say, "Hi, I'm FPP Dale." All right. But if there's no network to be found, these default back into access point mode, just like we connected to it over the laptop. So if you want to have multiples of these on your network, you need to change the tethering host name. Set them the same. So I'm going to call this FPP Dale, and there is the password. We're going to just leave it Christmas. Okay? It says, oh, we have to reboot again. Just like that. So now we're going to reboot again. Is my computer going to automatically connect to FPP Dale? Why? Because it's never seen it before. So now this is where, Todd, you may now power yours up, not connected on Ethernet, and you should have FPP as a hotspot. Yours powered on still. Okay. Cool. All right, so we'll give this thing a moment to boot up. Wireless, because it's not doing a DHCP yet. Correct, as you connect to FTP over Wi-Fi. It's common. Whoop. CHRIST.
Okay, so if my Pi is connected.
That's probably them in the back.
I'm not seeing Dale either.
It is there. It is there. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of networks in here. Okay? So now we have FPP Dale here, and now you could do your next one, you know, and then if you're doing more and more, then give it a name and whatnot. So now we can actually start configuring it. Or at this point, you know, if you're on your network and you have an open Ethernet or Ethernet port, you can go ahead and plug this in, reboot it again, and it will get an IP address on your network because you have a show network, which we'll cover in a couple of months, that gets a dynamic IP address, and then you can use Fing to find this if you need to, or go through your router information, or
I'll reserve mine.
you could do reserve, or you can do http://fppdale.local. Okay? If your router is like, supports that, a lot of them do, and then it will allow you to go directly onto it. Yep. When you're, if because all the routers, even consumer, provide DNS and some sort of lookup name. That's why I recommend Fing, because it'll show FPPDale in the list as 192.168.0.37 or something. And so you put that IP address into your browser, and then you're connected. Okay?
But you can also go in and add the Wi-Fi connected to your Wi-Fi.
You are correct. So the next step, if you're doing that, we can go to network.
Can we change here so I can turn mine on?
So here in the WL config, we can come in here, and the later versions actually do a network scan only of 2.4 networks. The Pis don't work on 5G networks. Maybe the Pi 5s are starting to, but I don't recommend using 5 gig networks. So 2.4 gig networks, and you can see here, these are all of the networks that I can see. And we could connect it to SMFR guest and put in this password, and then all of us would be able to get to it. But as we know, with Tim and I trying to do things, it doesn't allow like inter-client connectivity for security reasons and whatnot. So we're not going to do that. But that is where you would put in your show network Wi-Fi so that you can access it and go from there. After that, I will leave it to you. We've done classes about DHCP reservation by using MAC address to reserved IP address, so you can always go to that. Next month, is it? Oh, wow. There you go, next month. What else at this point? And that's about it. Just to get, yes.
So should I see your Dale, FPP Dale on my thing right now?
I just did that.
Not on Fing, no. That is when you're connected to a wireless network, and the Pi has joined that same wireless network. Right now, this is only creating a hotspot, so on your phone, you would see FPP Dale as a wireless network, okay? And if you were to connect to it and run Fing, you'd only find one device and your phone.
Okay.
So, and good point. I think this little access point is not the most supercharged. It's not designed to have like 8 devices connecting to it. It's only designed to have like 1 for setup, and then itself to connect to a Wi-Fi. Okay? So let's not all try and connect onto FPP Dale today, but does that answer your question?
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, at home, then you would join your network and put it on. Yes?
FPP Dale, when you're using 8.1.
Correct.
You can only have 2 users.
Okay.
But if you're FPP Dale on the big network, then it's unlimited.
Right.
To a degree. I mean, yeah, you shouldn't, typically maybe 2 of us have 2 computers connected to it or whatever, uploading. And that's the other thing is, and it's gotten much better, but there have been issues if you leave a computer connected to like the status page on here. So when the screen is on the default status page, this is constantly updated, okay? And that takes away resources because the priority is to send the data out the Ethernet port to your controllers to blink the lights that everybody enjoys, okay? And Todd can show you the remote Falcon plugin that allows you to see remote connectivity that's designed to go under the hood and not interrupt the normal higher priorities functions of the FPP. Yeah?
Multi, what's the next one down on the status page? Multi something.
So multi-sync?
Yeah. Will that also slow down the network?
No.
Because I use that at home.
No. So multi-sync is something that Doug, you use.
Yep.
Yeah. So you have you have a main FPP, and in the main FPP you have all your sequences, you have your audio files, your video files. That's where you would have your transmitter or your audio, distribution, either to your transmitter or speaker, all the above, whatnot. And it is in player mode. Now remember at the beginning you could set it to either be player or remote. And player also operates in standalone mode. So you can have 7 players that are all doing something different. And Steve, I think maybe you did this in Halloween or something. Like you could have external trips. So you have like maybe a Pi Zero controlling, a couple bushes or boogly eyes over here, that if you break a PIR sensor, ding, that thing's doing its own thing over here. It's not tied to the rest of the show. I had one where it tripped, a spider or something, or I think some of us did that as well. I got the most colorful language shouted, and candy went flying everywhere. It was amazing. Still picking out of the bushes 4 years later. That's at the old house. It's now their problem. But so you can have multiple players that are all acting independently. They can run their own schedules. They can do whatever they want. If you want one main Pi, and using Doug's network for example, and then 14 remote Pis, the main Pi is sending out the audio. It can also send out control data to controllers. It doesn't have to. In the case of Doug's, all of his are remotely connected, interconnected to a controller. So, yeah. So, in Doug's case, he has a Pi with an Ethernet cable directly into the controller, so it's just a real local network. All right. He accesses the Pis over the Wi-Fi, but in order to upload files or sequences, there's no sequence data going over the Wi-Fi. All right. Can sequence data go over Wi-Fi? Yes. Is it recommended? No. Do people do it? Yes. Are these all Wi-Fi devices receiving sequence data? Yes. WLED, QuinLED, I mean, there are devices out there. What was the old thing where we had a whole bunch of, wireless devices on the network? They all worked independently, and then you turn them on, and you get lag or stutter or something like that. So we'll talk. Yes?
Yes. Take 5.
All right.
Get them caught up.
5 minute. Todd, you want to help them?
For whatever reason on Windows, it's not letting us do the FTP local like I've done at home 100 times. So actually, we thought it was
That's a
128
deal.
gigabyte SD card you brought, but I used my 64, and he's still not able to
And you're
get.
definitely on the guest network?
Well, we tried both ways. I've got the gig Ethernet.
Okay, do not do Ethernet. Go Wi-Fi only.
Yeah, we tried
fresh install.
Yeah, we tried that.
What kind of Pi is it? Is it a Pi 3, 4, Pi 4? Okay.
Yeah.
And it is turned on, yeah?
You have a remote Pi, Wi-Fi, and it doesn't have any data.
I don't know the Windows environment. I know the Mac environment. So it didn't like this card for some reason.
But there is a card in here.
Yeah,
So
and
if you want to
I just pressed delete enter.
It did.
Yes, and so what happens is that the
Doesn't matter.
FPP player sends a sync package to start, stop.
I would reflash it.
So like when I would upload.
I would reflash it, and yes, you can.
Probably plastic.
Okay,
Yeah.
if it is definitely running,
Choose what goes on what. Remember over other things, you can say, set sequence data, set
The
sync data.
SD card's got all the.
This is Wi-Fi.
I've only done this
So pull your cord.
Oh, the cord, John.
Then I thought the outside was sparse.
and so
How do you know
It's only gonna have sparse, which means it's only gonna get
because if they don't,
a
it
sequence
means
file
that,
that's the
you know,
size of
a
what
write
they,
has gone bad.
So are you on
So
Wi-Fi?
that-
instead of the entire thing.
Yes,
Are you on that network?
Like, do it like that,
bad.
music or.
You bring up your phone.
I mean,
Right.
right, so you make it both.
So it's emulated at home. So open your phone, go to Wi-Fi. Your Wi-Fi's.
So my follow-up question from what the.
First of all, let's try to
I'm on
get
version
in
7,
1.2,
and I want to be able to keep all those when I go to version 7.5.
That's why you let Excel configure everything.
I don't like Excel configuring. I want version of FTP connected. So that's why it's internet, not transport on your configuration because it wouldn't recognize.
You can go to 192. There was a 168.
That was a controller. There was like a FTP5, there was a bug in 5 that is normal for if you were reversing a string and had it set up in a place that the string was reversed, it would transfer over, or it would transfer over, I think if the string, if you have multiple like virtual strings, if you have reverse that was down,
On this
right,
one,
like a virtual string, whatever the first one was, it would take it for all. So what, and they're disputed on everything, but then you could go in
So this is going
the
over.
controller and fix it, but if you ever put the configuration out, it would override it, but that got fixed. He did
If I
believe,
reboot after you change the name, you reboot it.
and then he goes, oh no, it's doing it, and then he's like, oh, I'll
Brian,
fix it.
we're not
And then he goes, oh,
connected
what
to
do I
you, are
thought?
we, by chance?
Then he goes, it's still fixed.
I am,
Are you still?
But the issue,
I have one called Grand Eliminations, and I just fired one up that's on .04.
Okay.
I don't take any.
Do I need to turn it off?
No, you're fine.
Flash everything. I
Yeah, I
just
don't
take
think-
it.
I'm just trying to get it both going.
Yep,
Still
that's fine.
does
I'm just
from
wondering if
controller.
we're possibly connected to you.
And so I plugged it in, and normally you plug it in, and you get like I did last year, and there was no hotspot.
So
So you weren't able to find it again?
It would show
This
up
might be
at
you.
all, and I'm like, what's going on here? And then
Using their
you just
stuff.
turn it, like, okay, let's
Why don't
break it
you
down to
go
simple.
through-
I think I had
if
unplugged.
this is
I plugged
FPP,
it. I don't
on here,
know
which it
what
should be.
directly into the, in, from my
Let's do this
network
one. So
into the
walk
device,
through,
if I can
change
find
the
what
name.
it says.
Right.
Okay. Do the
Well,
reboot, do
when I
this,
run
OS
the
expansion.
Either a cable that went from the
And so,
Thanks, man.
all of a sudden, the screen loaded before I did it. And so it was basically,
And that's what I was having, is I had an issue where one of my settings, like at my mom's house, did it have a static? It's connected only to a controller, but as long as this pi is connected to this controller, I can't wire this thing and look at it. She would have to go out, unplug the Ethernet cable, then it would become a stop and I would find it.
I'm just wondering which one we did. Why don't you unplug?
I thought it was around.
Well, it's actually around, I unplug the other one.
We got too many, we showed.
Right, yeah, we got too many default entities. This is exactly what you run into. So
Everybody else,
we're not the only ones
here that probably click
it's
Right.
plugged,
No
it's
spaces.
not plugged into any network or any, like, just leave it to
No
controller.
spaces.
Or no.
Also,
This thing
okay,
that would tell us.
good point. No spaces in host names, passwords, access point names. Doug is the exception. Doug calls and I say remove spaces and he says no.
I just haven't gotten around to doing it on everything.
So, yes.
It works.
Dash and underlines is the other issue.
If you want to do a space for clarity, use an underscore. Do not use a hyphen.
Actually, I just tried it underscored and it said it's not allowed. It said you have
Oh,
to,
they removed it. Ha
it
ha
said you
ha.
have to use a hyphen.
Okay,
Unplug it.
cool. They moved it.
Can I use an emoji? Unplug everything I can. No, I mean, just like.
he's walking
All
away.
right, so get that set up, reboot it because we have another one that wants to get running.
It says reboot.
It won't fit.
and take it to the advanced developer settings.
Right.
And then you get more information here, and you're able to set Wi-Fi priorities over Wi-Fi over Ethernet. And that's when I did.
Where's the profiles?
Yeah.
We're gonna question ten.
So, yeah, it's,
So in your advanced settings, you're gonna set and
Now,
Wi-Fi as priority.
F4, V3.
Controller, okay.
When I plug my Ethernet
Now,
into
what I would
that,
have done here is assign.
and I can get through, I can no longer get tethered. Do I have to unplug
There.
that particular
So
line?
that way,
I can go
and I
back
would
to
say
tether
that
again?
somewhere in the
You have to set it
199.
so this is the base.
Right, you have to set it.
100.
So
Anything
if
less
you
than
plug
255.
the Ethernet from the Pi directly into here, like Doug does, so it's all self-contained.
They still do that?
You can still get to the Pi over the Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
8.1.
And I'm doing that.
Okay.
Not 8.1, but through my,
Everything right here related is.
Okay, so in that case, you have your Pi connected to your show network and your Falcon connected to your show network.
And then
and in my router, I have a table.
Right, you have the allow remote, allow password.
I have to check my area, which laptop I use.
the low number.
Yep, so that's great. So yeah, you have routing,
That file.
perfect. Doug does the exact same thing, so awesome.
Go to status page.
So you're able to get, so yes, your connection to this, to get to this interface website is through the Pi, right?
That's the way you put it on.
But if I wanted to do tail,
7.4 or 7.5.
I unplug that, so right, then I can go back to tethered. Because this
You
is
have
the
to-
thing, to find a Wi-Fi.
If it can find a previously configured, if the Raspberry Pi can find a previous,
Yeah.
no,
My
if the Pi can find the configured Wi-Fi network, it's going to join it if it can.
Can you bring up all the?
If it can't, it will default back to tethering by default. So you can turn off your Wi-Fi or go to the garage or outside the bounds, but yeah, that's it. No.
Smaller.
The Genius controllers have an onboard Wi-Fi
Because it's
module
not what you're
that
sending.
you can,
It should show up in that. There's nothing.
So-
It could be him.
the Geniuses have an onboard Wi-Fi that you can go directly to a Genius controller. It's not designed to send wireless, sequence data, correct, all sequence data. You can do an upload, you can do a firmware upgrade over the Wi-Fi, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, we got FPP
Oh,
Dale
4 does,
there.
yeah. Yep. And 3 did, yeah, 3 does too.
But you can't.
Yeah,
You must still be.
right.
Well, he changed
One of my
Christmas one.
controllers
Whatever you change the password to, put that.
All right, if everybody's got the FTP as automatically reconnect, and every time they reboot.
Yeah, so you don't have
all
to set it
errors.
already, because you're not actually trying to set it.
I was over there.
Well, he's on a different end on your master, is it also connected wired?
So one of them.
There we go. Because that looked like you were back to that before.
But there was some.
Changed my idea on what I wanted to do.
Cancel. Do you have to disconnect here to go Wi-Fi? No.
There were some issues that we did with the DVM was on,
And then.
but the show's on. We were having a problem.
Click outside.
That's not you.
And then.
We were having problems getting activity. That was over reboot, so we had to switch it to wireless. And then when I since done more work, I added a Wi-Fi.
You can go ahead and
Or
reboot.
Reboot, but when you're,
Because there's enough space to write about the new tether name
for a
inside the
different
1 gig.
VLAN. That's for
Then
a
yes.
normal house.
Now your access will open up and the new name.
So I'm still
You'll
wired
have to
to it. Just
So your default is wireless, or your
Like what? If it was retained, just because why not?
He does it in the list.
The way it's.
The complexity of your models has
Yeah.
made it so it's not as simple.
Yeah,
This
there's
is
connections on that VLAN.
yeah, I would say disconnected.
The tether.
On the what?
I'm clicking it, come back.
Put in Christmas.
And now.
I thought you said
I'll
get out right away. And then if I always try to follow up with that.
Access point.
It might take.
So there's Wi-Fi.
Unfortunately, so bad, it's like so much work.
Okay, yeah, so you're not worried about dropping the bag of wires. If you want to wire me some money too,
But yeah, it used to be hardwired, and I was going through a power line
I
connector.
ordered a bunch
So
of
that's
stuff from
the-
AliExpress.
You know, going through a house wire. And
See,
those
so
were,
you're
those were
automatically.
sketchy, you know, what kind of works.
So I logged into
When you
their
get
website.
once we did
They said, well, it was supposed to be
we
done
had
in
it,
February.
you know, we had it,
Yeah, this was like the first.
Don't automatically
I
connect.
never got it.
That's what's happening. You're booting, and it's grabbing straight up.
So it's.
This wire.
Right, so it's device that allows it to plug into broadcast.
Oh, we bought it, buddy.
Out to
They make a lot of money off me. I paid for that stuff all the time.
My daughter bought a gym.
They're all different kinds. It's basically because it makes it, so.
Right,
you
it's
don't
like
have
a
to
hot spot. Yeah.
We don't have to run it.
But
But for whatever reason,
The wires.
I
She got parts. But that's kind of our own fault, right? For not having customer service.
So I've got a little surge.
Wi-Fi doesn't work like that.
That's why I like this is code.
It's like another.
Show me how you reset.
Flashing green line. You take the flashing green on the top. And turn it.
Wait a minute, go back into
So yeah,
the.
that doesn't work.
And then all of a sudden,
So I used to. I just had to walk in. I'm telling you, I don't know how many times I watched it over there. Oh, it's working out.
Put it in an envelope, mail it to.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
And
it
then.
was probably never booked to begin with, but they reported it. You just walk in there, oh, it's working out.
Look up.
Right, I got it. All for SS.
No, so Pat Delaney,
You can take this, have her send SD card, and then you plug it into the line.
Oh, yeah. Basically, make a phone first. Percentage.
Can't I just connect him manually? Physically now?
Put me on the list first. Every time I walk in, I fix a problem.
I didn't grab the IP
You
address.
don't have time to go with it.
There's nothing.
But
Is that what he said about our Facebook?
You guys better?
They're both off.
You plug it in.
You know what?
If you don't, then now you cable. Just swap the cable out.
They're all like.
The problem's-
You know what, so it looks like we beat him in this game, even though we reset, even though a network we changed to FTP Bell, we're connected to, on a Wi-Fi.
I'm like, what? I guess it is. Cowbell.
Cowbell. Need more cowbell.
Because it's the funniest
One of
thing.
these is the DHCP
That's this
server.
big dude.
Okay, so
Big
you
dude
don't know.
here. Yeah, they just cut to.
Remember, that's what I was saying.
So you would have to set a static IP address here. Static IP address on
Jammed in his cowbell.
Are you still with Wi-Fi?
Because there's no.
I mean, for me, it's router. He's turning. He's turning. It was funny.
And this is a router.
I heard the supervisor.
In this, I'm gonna feel like
configuration. These
No,
are,
I just wanna make sure you.
This is-
These tickets were spent so
this has no idea. I do, we don't want to do it ourselves. I don't want to do the thing.
The server would come.
You're basically, you're
You
find
are
out.
a legend, you are.
That's what, because I had a team tell me, I don't know what the team does.
No, so.
But this isn't doing them anything.
But
not doing anything.
we're not- the day we're not here, you'll find out in a hurry.
Only worked there for a year and a half, and they fired me.
This is all in the first four pages of the.
That's why I want you to get out and
So
close.
there is a
People
FPP now reboot, so hit
go in.
close. Now when you reboot, you will be FPP Dale.
But I couldn't
And
speak
I-
Spanish.
So.
And we're on FPP now, but we're rebooting, and that will be telling you.
Just change
This
the
is
name.
always
Bill
a-
means.
Now, yep, this is FPP Bill. So I'm on it right now.
Until then.
You're going in twice to reboot. We have the latest for FPP. Yeah, so you're, now you're doing it on the plug. I grabbed you.
Yeah, take a couple hours.
Everybody's got to get later. He's never bonded stuff.
And Brian, you are not an FPP at all? You are not broadcasting FPP?
No, rather, mine are called brand eliminations, remote brand eliminations. I had not tried it.
That just means it has.
I mean,
While it's showing you that page, that doesn't mean that it's actually reloaded. So the only way to know is just go to status
They never do it.
and see, as soon as you call them, we refresh that, it'll be stuck. Change the Wi-Fi name.
So we did have another FPP up here.
Of course.
Sorry. So, yeah, that should be free now, we just disconnected from it.
Brian up there that you're
Once you make a change like that.
Well, he was, I remember one day he was.
Right, so this FPP is going away.
Everybody had.
Yeah, so go back up and see. Oh, yeah, you need to connect to. You tell everybody to turn that on. The new one will show up.
That'd be nice if that.
What do you mean?
I gotta get me one.
It was all veterans, they all knew what they were doing.
Well, go ahead and take that off.
Yeah.
There was enough space in there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Would it connect?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone had the same Wi-Fi.
That's the first thing I do on any of my boxes.
That's why she's on.
Because
And he
these
said,
little
you
things
know,
that
he
get
did the same.
damaged are super, super easy.
And Dodge
At work,
somebody else.
people are putting stickers
You
on
gotta have some.
right on the laptops and it drives me batty.
Brian, did you?
Don't,
Yes, they're both rebooting,
just for the purposes. of-
Rebooting now?
just now.
Christmas.
So I
No one
have
else
an
will use that
FPP.
name.
Okay, so let's see if this might be you.
I got mine set up.
So I have an FPP Bill, I have an FPP Dale,
Plugged in.
and an FPP.
That's you.
And that's
Gotta be you.
gotta be in now.
Mine both say grand illuminations on it. One says remote, and one says regular.
So my, or
Right.
these are all my
Okay.
station identified.
All right, we're successfully done.
Cool.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So,
Which one it is, right?
if I can get everybody's attention as well, I do want to give kudos to Brian, even though he was messing us up for a second.
You're welcome. I take
A
back my
lot
apology.
of, and we'll cover this next month, but a lot of Wi-Fi routers or access points or something, like if you get something brand new, who here is like Comcast, out of the box, Xfinity, Wi-Fi? Okay, who has, another one, vendor supplied equipment and it's doing their Wi-Fi? Okay? And you're just connecting to that network, this is my network house. By default, they're like, oh, Wi-Fi 6 through your entire house, okay? What that is doing is it's actually combining the 2.4 and the 5 and the 6 and the soon-to-be 7 Wi-Fi networks all on top of one another. That is bad for this kind of thing. For those of you that don't have a show network or just trying to do this initial setup. So Brian has 2 networks. And there's an option to split, or actually it's turn on combine or something. If you don't turn on combine, it will say, what do you want to call your 2.4 network? and what do you want to call your other network, all right? Brian created a Grand Illuminations 2.4 and a Grand Illuminations 5. Then you know exactly which network that you're trying to connect to. My only recommendation would be to leave, like if it's Grand Illuminations, just leave Grand Illuminations and that's it. And with no suffix of a number is 2.4. For a lot of IoT devices and that don't like long characters and names or whatever, so just call it that. And then if you then call the 5G network or the 6G networks Grand Illuminations 5 or Grand Illuminations 6. Does that make sense to everybody?
So I'm actually today setting up Wi-Fi 7. So with the third band, because I have some 6E
Right.
compatible devices.
Have one network name
But
per.
I'm now ditching Nighthawk for letting Comcast's box. So, would you still set up since they intelligently go from 2.4 to 5 for all my devices, right? But would you say that you still create?
Don't combine. Uncheck the combine
Well, I
network.
mean, for my house, I'm gonna have to, but
No,
what I'm saying is.
You don't have to. Keep all of your 2.4s on 2.4, keep your 5s on 5, your
Why not
6s
just create a separate, I mean, that's very easy.
in SSID that
Yeah,
only.
it's easy for me to create using an older tier,
Right.
So
So-
S500, and then just creating that as my FTP show network, and then having all my devices connected that. Would you do that, or would you?
I would create a separate show network on a separate access point on 2.4, and we do it through Ubiquiti here. Like a lot of us just use Ubiquiti, it just works. And we don't, because that's one of them that says combine or not. Combine the network, and you say no, do not combine. No, I have T-Mobile fiber now. Remember that one meeting that says fiber's being installed in 2 hours?
You know what killing me is Voltron. I had a good neighbors right now that say quantum fiber, and I'm like,
Which is CenturyLink.
and I'm like, I had to stop one day, and I'm like, so we have to get fiber, and he's like, yeah, one day.
Main network, the IoT.
Oh,
So-
you're lying.
Better?
We're on. Changing the color name.
I was just like,
Yes!
Put in all the utilities, infrastructure.
no, this is their bands now, we're rebranding.
50
But I've
feet
seen like
down the hallway.
miles or
As you
so
walk,
away.
I love with Apple Watch.
It just goes ahead.
It just,
They've been doing it,
signal
some sort of
street,
wire.
so it's a signal street, the RSSI goes lower.
I almost was
It
like,
says, oh,
once,
you're not good
it
enough
wasn't
to talk
worth
to
my
me,
time to
it
actually
disconnects,
kind
and
of
so they
stop
find
and try to ask
something.
them if they were doing
Talk
fiber.
to me,
red,
But I'm hoping for what they were doing.
B, it disconnects.
But yeah, you don't.
I'm anxious to see what
No,
happens
because
to
And
carrier
that's
jobs.
just take care of all this.
Right, which is carrier
They're gonna
six,
pay for our
right?
internet
So if a packet does get dropped,
It's
you're
always
just
a realize that
never
you're supposed to
seen
just
it.
let X-Light stick on the hand. Exactly the way I want it.
Right?
And so, all the
That's pretty reliable. But it's not. It's the cheapest extension. They have their like
Export it back up.
price.
you're doing in there.
That's
It's like $35 and that's.
Sometimes it's a controller, sometimes for.
We're paying
devices,
75,
smartphones,
but it's
All right,
Xfinity.
we are back to stable ground. We have no 4 FPPs all broadcasting the same name. We have FPP Bill, we have FPP Grand Illuminations, and we have FPP Dale, and then we have FPP and something else in the back. Cool. So, interesting question. If upgrading from, let's say, version 4, because there's probably some of you out there, Gary, that have a version 4 or less.
That new?
Exactly, right?
I still run four.
Exactly.
Like two sides.
So the question is, okay, if it's configured exactly how it works and everything, but I want to go to 7.5, you know, to take advantage of other things, whatnot. What would be the best way to do it? In my opinion, okay, and this has lasted well for about 3 to 4 years, yes, there is an export or a backup and a restore. Does it work 100%? I would say your mileage may vary. Okay? The best advice would say is to take a screenshot of each page, print it out so that you can go back in and change them all back. if something were to happen. So, to Doug's point, let, X-Lights or whatever upload all the configuration, and Doug will cover X-Lights and, FPP Connect and push all that stuff up there. Yes, it's great. Do I use it? No. Do I use it on some commercial installations? No. Hey, I just used the visualizer for the first time like a few months ago. And I had a hard time doing that. Sorry, Dan.
See, wouldn't it be nice if X-Lights or in FTP in like the advanced settings, they had an export tab that actually just would print out, do exactly what you showed, one page and show you all your settings. That way,
It would be. Cool.
that way you have all the.
Go get a PHP for Dummies book and write your own plugin.
SSH shell.
Yeah. So that would be my recommendation. If you're upgrading, it works better since like 6 and 7, but if you're going from a Gary version to current day, no, I wouldn't recommend it at all.
Yeah. My only issue I had with that last year was one of my scripts for
Yeah.
powering the like laser.
Yeah.
or
So, yeah,
things
any of
that
those
carry
low-level
over, right?
things, and for example, like the projector plugin, and I think they just fixed it. It's been broken for a couple of years, and that's why people they had a dedicated Pi. John's Pi was dedicated to just the projector. That was it. That's all it ran. Like, it took a trigger, it played, that was it. Because there's low-lying serial drivers, because the Pi, has a serial port, and it has to communicate with a RS-232. So there's a driver and there's code that needs to translate, just like your Arduino RS-485. The Pi has to do a very similar thing to connect to that over baud rate 9600, whatever it is, N81. Some of that didn't work, or it wasn't installed in the base level operating system. So a lot of the plugin developers said to like Chris and Dan and all those, like, these are what I use in my plugins. Can it just be part of the or the script tried its best to install, but it'd go burp, error, and it's like, that's where you would need to go into the SSH terminal and download and install and, But any of that, just FYI, is not a source for the Zoom Room. Like, like OS level type stuff. The Zoom Room is for like X-Light support, FPP Connect, and everything that's been installed on top. They're not going to go under and change drivers or whatever. They would help you with networking and making sure that your gateway is set correctly, or setting a static IP or something like that. But they're not going to walk through drivers. They may punt you if there's somebody on there into a breakout room, but that's not the design of that. Yeah? Make sense? Cool. You guys getting good back there?
Yeah, somebody's learned how to type.
I got a question. What
Yeah.
would serve as the trigger for the Pi?
I need more context.
Well, like for instance, if I was running a sequence and then I wanted it to trigger to make this feature work.
Trigger what?
To make the feature work, so that way it would make the Pi then know that, okay, it's time on.
So there's multiple different ways to trigger it, and you could use a GPIO, like a PIR sensor. Yeah, actually we have a Pi that we can actually use. So, all right, so we have a working Pi, all right? This is a working Pi, FPP Dale. It's broadcasting FPP Dale. It's on 7.5. There's also this right here, this enable stats. What does this do? It helps the developers show, how many there are out in the wild. It will report up like once an hour or something if it's connected to the internet, just saying, hey, this is who I am. It's not going to show your sequences. It's not going to share your music files or anything like that. It just allows the developers to see like how many are out there, what versions, and if there's a crash dump or an issue, it can automatically upload those issues to the developers, and it'll open a ticket and they'll be advised of it. So if you do join the Zoom room, it probably already knows what's going on. So if we hit enable stats,
and it'll say restart FTPD because that's where it runs in the background. Now, this one's not going to do it because it's not on the internet, it's just doing the access 179. All right? The next logical area, so we've got status page, network we set up, multi-sync we were talking about, the main. FTP settings is for like logging, so, or if you're setting up your output, virtual display, virtual matrix, sorry, virtual display, HDMI, or disable.
How do they get switched?
In my recommendation, I would be like, if you're not doing anything, just leave it by default. Why? Because, Brian brought a HDMI monitor, Todd brought one. If it's disabled and you plug in a monitor to try and troubleshoot it, it's going to be black. It's going to be dark. It's not going to show you when it's on. Okay? So if you're not using a projector, you can leave this by default. Right? I wouldn't disable it, and if you disable it using a projector, it just won't work. Okay? Disable IP announcement, this is something you can turn on because it'll say, I have the following IP address, 192, that if you have a speaker on your transmitter. Okay? The time zone, the user interface. So I don't get into all this. Here it is the UI password. But right here, this user interface. For those of you that want to live on the edge, go ahead and switch to the developer. But it's going to open up a whole bunch of checkboxes. Okay? If you know what you're doing, go ahead. If you don't, don't. Because you can seriously foobar the inner workings, and you won't know what you've done. And first thing they'll say is what? Reflash. Okay? So, there's a developer mode for a reason because then you can get additional logging. That's over here, and you can see a lot of these are set to default. Or info only. It's designed to just kind of write to the SD card a little bit. These SD cards do not last forever. That's why they're cheap. Buy a few. Balena Etcher, as we did at the beginning, once you get everything set up and it's working perfectly, stick that SD card back in your computer and use Balena Etcher to make an image of it. Okay? It will image that SD card to a file on your computer. Now, make sure you have enough space on your computer, or maybe use like an external hard drive or something like that, and say Balena Etcher clone or image my SD card. And so it'll make, just like we had that PyZip 7.5 file that we exploded onto the SD card, it's going to do the reverse. So it's going to take your entire image, take a picture of it, make a file that you can then put a blank SD card, okay, into Balena Etcher and say, put this file onto this card, and now you have two identical SD cards. So if one fails or gets wet or whatever, take it out, stick it in. That would be your first line of defense. If you knew everything was just working fine and weird things are happening, I would remove that SD card, put the new one in, knowing that, hey, it's mirrored as of this date, okay? And then it will just start right back up again. Everything. That's why you have to make sure that you have enough space on your computer or on your hard drive in order for that function to happen. Everything that's on that SD card. It's as if you took a piece of paper, system. So over here, if you're using, a television, if you want to output, so there are different resolutions, and there's VGA, 240, all these different types of resolutions, 1080p, etc., that the Pi can change. Because we are on a Pi 4, we have a second output. I asked for the feature to be able to play two simultaneous videos at the same time, and this kind of drove that option. For the longest time, only HDMI, actually they were mirrored. So HDMI 1 and HDMI 2 or 0 and 1
were identical outputs, but now they can do independent. That would be a use case to get the higher RAM or the Pi 4 or Pi 8 gig, because you're really now running a lot of stuff and asking that CPU to do a lot of stuff. If it's also outputting sequence data. Okay? Make sense?
We are off.
Yes, so we're just making sure.
Geographic location. All right. Content setup. File manager. This is where you would upload your MP3s, MP4s, FSEQ files, for those of you like me that do it, manually. If you're like Doug and Dale.
And Todd.
And Todd, okay, fine.
The rest of the world.
Wow.
Although I do upload video manually.
But your way
Do
is
you?
faster. Your way is faster for file transfer.
Yes, yes. Again, no spaces, no funky characters, ones and zeros, A through Z, hyphens or underscores, because Linux is a zero-based operating system. So if you have, like for those of us that may or may not have ripped DVDs or whatever, and you have, track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 11, well, when you browse in a computer, it's 1, 11, 2, like that. So that is what appears here because there's a space after it. But if it's not space, then things start flowing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 11. All right? And it is as easy as, select a file, drag and drop, on here and see, oh, look at me. There's an image. Where do we think it's going to go?
Mega tree.
Under images. So it reads the metadata, or it basically reads the extension of the file name. So if you have a video file that's called .jpg, it's going to go into image and treat it like an image. It's not going to go in and say, is this truly a video or an image? It's going to use the extension. It's just
That's why scripts go to script file.
Yes. And a script is like .php, .sh, something else.
I think
Okay.
it's actually gonna work.
Some of the plugins install scripts by default. Okay, if we were on my other one, for example, like the projector control, it would actually install scripts in here to say projector on, projector off, input 1, whatever the model that you connected and the capabilities that we have configured for that plugin, you can then just schedule those as events. Just a DVD player playing, it can actually switch over the remote control to the other input and run that, and then when you call it, and basically a remote control automatic. Yeah? And then logs, here's all the different logs. The FSEQ files over here. And then we have playlists. So in here for the playlists, it's as simple to come in here, create a playlist, Dale, randomize. I mean, there's so many new options these days. And here are your different options. We have branch dynamic, FPP command, image, media only. So if I want to play my image, I select it. It shows all my images, and I say add, it's right there. Now, if I leave to go to a different tab, what's going to happen?
It's going to forget it.
Yeah, it won't save. This is one of the things that does not save automatically, so make sure that you hit the save playlist and you get the bubble, and then you can verify this by going back to the main page, and you see our playlist. Also, depending on the media type, like sequences or certain media, you can select it directly here in the status page and play it. So if you want to test your audio only, just see if your speaker is running, go ahead, you can select here, hit play. You don't have to make a playlist for an MP4 or MP3 file, and it will play it directly once or in repeat if you check the box. So If we select there, hit repeat, hit play, boom. My wonderful mug is now going out the HDMI port on repeat.
There's nothing to play.
Wow, Dale, thanks. But you're absolutely correct. So, all right. Any questions on that?
So if you go back,
Yep.
go through the different commands.
Yep. So in playlists, we'll create a new playlist.
It's just,
Yep.
so the list is very long, it keeps going.
Yes.
And so,
Oh, that's the end of the list.
no, I don't think so, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe under FTP command, the list is,
Oh, true.
there you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Good point. Thanks, Dale. So for back a little bit further before I do that, you see here that you have lead in and lead out. All right. Lead in on a playlist, when you schedule something to start at 5 o'clock, you're in the right time zone. You can say, some of us have like Internet of Things, like, you know, bulbs or TP Casa or whatever, lasers to turn off the street light. No,
I don't know what you're
I wasn't
talking
supposed to say that out loud. So
Turn on the radio.
exactly, yes. Turn on the AC to turn on the speaker. Yes, correct.
But you only want to do it once during the show.
You only wanted to do it once at the beginning, okay? So that is what we would put in our lead in. So if we wanted to say, for example, run script, okay? And that would run an area and say, okay, add. And if it lands in here, you can just go ahead and drag it around. All right, so what it's going to do is it's going to run this script at the beginning of the sequence, and then everything inside of this. So if we're going to do, maybe we want effects start to be the next one. All right, maybe we want to run an effect.
What would an example be?
Just tune to sign.
Okay.
So in effect, in Xlights, can you still export
Yes.
ESEQ files?
Yes.
Okay, so by default, your sequence data is an FSEQ, Falcon sequence data. ESEQ is effect sequence data or background sequence. They used to be called background sequences for a long time. If you upload an ESEQ and you call it background thing, right? Just by default, if you upload that to your Pi, the moment that you apply power to your Pi, you don't have to have a schedule or anything. It will just keep playing background, I think it's called background. It'll just keep playing and playing and playing on loop. And that's perfect for like a tune to. What do you, Steve, you do something similar or no? With background or just an effect?
It's just a remote.
Just a remote, yeah. So you can achieve it that way, like, you know, just start playing in repeat mode, fire. That is something else you could do in a lead-in, like a remote start to a
Falcon?
yeah, correct, exactly. Or a two sign, or you know, something that's running out there that has no timing need to the rest of your show. Okay. Other items in here, so like effect start. At the end of your show, who here takes all of their sequence data and their sequences to off? Or do you just like let them go and then at the end it's just done, like the pixel data is done? Anybody like send
I have
a,
an off sequence that shuts. So
okay,
because
so
sometimes stuff stays on.
exactly. Sometimes things just stay on and they don't get that data to turn off the pixel. So to your point, you could create a separate sequence with all of your channels in Xlights, upload it as an all off, okay? Put darkness or whatever, zero as the RGB for everything, or an AC off, whatever, on all channels, and then upload that as an all off. So then you can have that as an entry, a sequence, sequence only, and have it all off and add that in there, and it will turn them all off. Or,
After you do it here.
or you could use an FPP command and say all lights off.
Wow.
What if you have multiple remotes and you have this on your main FPP? Will it work and turn all the lights off? No. Why?
Because the remote doesn't have that command set on it.
Close.
There's a remote off.
So if they're running in remote, this command, and if you're on the same version across the board, it would execute this command on all remotes. Okay? However, it may not work if you're running in standalone. Why would they not work if they're running in standalone? Well, this is only configured to turn off the lights that this instance channels are configured for. So if this instance is only configured for channels 1 through 100, but your other remotes are configured for 101 through 200, and they're in standalone mode, they won't turn off. They'll stay on. Okay? It's only configured to turn off this instance if you're running in player standalone mode. If you're running in remote and they're all the same version, they will turn everything off. The external in is back here. Or you can select input whichever one you want. Okay? So, channel inputs. FPP Connect automatically configures this for you. So if something goes wrong, you can go in here and take a look to see if this instance is properly configured. But by default, it would look like this and probably set to like, you know, five universes, multicast, unicast, ArtNet, depending on what FPP configured sets up. We can cover unicast and multicast when we talk networking. Typically, multicast is the way to go unless you start getting very, very large, and you may start seeing lags. Some of the IoT devices may not like it. You might need to talk to them in unicast mode only. So that might be a reason why to do that. Okay.
I don't think I have anything on mine.
Yeah, the input rarely has anything.
Correct.
But if you go to the output.
The outputs is
The
where
output, right. For the longest time, it was like map, and this is when we were sending data over the Wi-Fi to be translated. So you had to capture, just like the Falcons had to be configured for the amount of data that they're going to receive in order to be able to output it. So if one was less, like 1 through 100, but you had 500 configured on the output, only 1 through 100 would output because it only saw 1 through 100 on the inputs. Okay? So on the output, enable output, this is where the FPP Connect comes in really handy. They look very much identical. You know, the unicast address, you can give it some description. And then the monitor output over here, turning it on and off.
We're not on all.
It's gotten better. Is it turned on or off by default?
It's on.
It's on by default. So it's gotten better. What this does is when FPP boots up and it's on that main screen, it tries to communicate with all your output devices, controllers, bulbs, or whatever. And if something is not on, you know, like if you have your controllers on a power timer, you know, on and off, something like that, it's going to constantly, are you there, Al? Are you there? Are you there? Are you there?
My apron does that
Okay,
too.
we renamed ours
So,
with a capital B.
It will, you know, slow it down. I think it'll do like 3 and then stop or whatever.
Right. What I'm saying is,
So you can turn this off if you know you're going to not be running for a long time, or leave it on because you know the show's going to be running. It's really helpful that, oh, what's not running, you can quickly go to the status page on your phone. It says, oh, I can't communicate with, you know, 10.1.2.7, and you're like, okay, that's my front big tree or something. So there's something inherently wrong on the network potentially.
The issue is that X-Lights will override it and turn them all back on. And then also occasionally, if you're not getting anything out, check the enable output, because
Yes,
I've
right
had
here.
issues where that's got unchecked,
Yep.
and that's why it wasn't working.
Or if you're troubleshooting and, you know, you don't want to make changes and you want to see if one area is working, come in and, you know, as I, you know, make changes to all this stuff, again, this is another one that you have to hit save. All right? For pixel strings.
I'm sorry. Just randomly do that, but let's go to
It's connected. And now it's,
so we're just uncomplicated.
it's connected.
We're just removing the other.
That's a lot of, it's off the screen.
Generic serials for Arduino.
I want for like one of these. So anybody have a Pi cap? You know, those 2 ports that you can run, you know, 800,000 pixels? Wonderful things.
Yes, wonderful.
Oh, Dale?
Let's see if
You ain't got nothing left to do.
You stole it?
No, no, you want, I need to disconnect from SML Power Gas and go properly so that it's not.
Anyway, so a Pi cap, you know, looks somewhat like this, but it's designed to sit on top of a Pi, and it translates those GPIO pins into SPI data to actually light up pixels. You can only use 2811 pixels. Nope, that's a panel hat, but very similar.
Still Pi hat.
So the pixel allows you to control 2 strings up to 1024. You might have to do power injection or reduce the brightness, etc. But but you know, it's great for a small thing, or you know, 2 port, and then the Falcon had the 4 port. Now that's all gone by the wayside. But you know how? What's that?
I have one.
Yeah. So they all had their purpose and function, and you know they still work today. So I had one for the longest time, and I think I got one from you one time. You know, so they're amazing. They're awesome to use them, etc. And yeah, you just configure it in here, give it the start channel. There you go. Now, for the longest time, if you're trying to use a Pi hat and audio and HDMI, like, good luck. All right, it may or may not work. Why? Because the moment you put a Pi Pixel hat on here, that becomes higher priority than HDMI or audio or anything like that. So if you want to or need to use a Pixel Pi hat, use it as a remote or a standalone, and then use a different Pi for your main Pi to control that. Right? Because for the longest time, you would hear or like a data scratch over the audio, and it was a bleed from the pixel data in the bus and all that.
You hear it on the FM radios too.
Exactly. Yeah. Anybody turn on all their pixels and then their garage door stops working? I mean, very similar situation.
Is that other screen where you would put a WLED like it did, or something?
No,
No? Okay.
Yeah.
that's just a regular.
That's just a regular DDP or E131 output, depending on how the did is configured.
So if you go back to other for the virtual makers, this is where you also have to set your
What's the difference
Oh,
between
there's no
those two
device.
virtual words?
I don't know, I just use the virtual makers.
Yeah, we don't have the option on here.
Well, delete that, and then put that one, it should go.
So, when you get home, so right now, your network is connected to your tethering, right? So when we go to,
Overlay.
So overlay models.
when you get home, so right now,
Might
the
have to
tethering,
reboot it, maybe it's confused.
That's my same.
so just make that something.
Well, I just did this, like,
You can make it.
Yeah,
You don't have to say FBB, you can say.
oh, this is 7,
7.5.
Just remember what.
That's all I tried to do.
restart it.
Let's restart.
Anyway, you have to put your resolution in there.
Yes.
All have right now, would it not
Too
happen
many
if
of them.
we were at home? If you were at home and then,
I don't understand why you have to.
just remember.
You got an image coming to it, it's got a
I
resolution.
should just
Yeah, and you got to tell what resolution you want.
And I would say do your password, just make sure.
So why is there a third thing?
For virtual matrix with an X like it has a resolution, right? So many lines by so many lines.
I would take a screenshot of
And
that.
you have to match them, or else you're,
Right.
it'll
But
display
you're not gonna
all
be using
funky.
tethering mode.
Right, you have to get, it's a matrix.
You know, if you play
For me, or for the upload data with my configuration, it doesn't work. It creates more problems than it does, so I disable it.
Do you, on your P5 sticks, whatever you call them, panels, what do you use for that? Is it just channel data or is it?
Yeah, it's just a,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an LED
yeah,
panel.
just a panel that just has a start and
You
stop
won't be tethering, period.
Right.
universe.
Tethering is really irrelevant.
These are the LED panels.
Here, because we all have.
Right.
So go ahead and go back up and.
You know, one of these guys here, and
Are they unbreakable?
it is, this one is.
Okay.
But, yeah, a P5 panel with just a single hat that I had laying around with a 5-volt. Now, don't crank the sucker on all white because this thing will brown out. This is only providing enough power to light up the panel very, very dimly in my office and the Pi Zero. But it does work, you know, and it can scroll messages. It's, let's see, 3 amps. So this guy's taking 1.5, 2, and then that's not much power left over for this thing. So when this thing goes all white, it goes really bright, then it reboots. Then it goes really bright, and it reboots. Because this steals all the power.
Does it still need 6 milliamps per pixel?
I don't know. That's above my pay grade.
Like the strings do?
So, I mean, they do take power, and I brown it out quite often sometimes. But it's just a cool little thing to test on my to, you know, define all that, and we're not going to cover that today. But you match that configuration here. So the different, there's 7 outputs on there. So it's, you know, output, you know, port 1 through whatever. I'm sorry, output 1 through whatever, panel 1 through whatever. So if this is all in the same output, be panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4, and these panels have arrows that have the up, so the orientation needs to match how it is, you know, facing the street. So if this panel is upside down due to, you know, wiring, ease of wiring or whatever, you just flip the arrow on there, and then it knows exactly how to send data to this panel. Yeah? All right. Switch. Output processors. So this. Has anybody had a prop just die, or a port on your controller just die mid-season?
Well, the COVID era pixels on my spheres that I put 20 feet up in the tree all went bad.
That's pixels, not a port. So if a port dies, it can't, you know, output anything, or it's just garbage or whatever. What you could do is you can easily copy that channel data. So let's say port 1 that was outputting channel 1 through 100 died, but you take those pixels and you plug it into port 7. You could easily say, copy the data from port 1 to port 7. And FPP will literally make a copy of the data. So later in the season, if you wanted to add, you know, another megatree or another ball or whatever, that's exactly the same. You can put it over here on this controller, and if that output of that controller is, let's say, 14,000 over there, but your prop that is over here is on port 1,000 or channel 1,000, you just say copy 1,000 to 14,000 and boom, done. They will do exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. You wouldn't have to go back and re-render or maybe use a sequence you bought or you lost, like whatever. FPP can copy data real time to 2 different outputs or 2 different channels. You just have to make sure that your controller knows what channels to send out that port.
The controller, not the PI.
The PI sends it to the controller, so the controller needs to receive it. But if you like set it up, a lot of, you know, for me, I set, what is it, 3 universes per port or something, like 1,000 channels per port, just to kind of make it easy. So my DMX are on like channel 1 through 512, but 513 through 1023 are not in use. But port 2 starts at 1024, 1025, and then that way. So everything's set up exactly the same, so that allows me to just copy from 1 to 14,000. Okay? Pixel overlay models. So pixel overlay models are very helpful when you're, you know, and a lot of times that FPP Connect will upload this, but this is where you can get very granular if you're doing FPP as like a standalone controller. And I believe the BeagleBones would use this a lot because they're using like a controller mode. That if you have a big megatree and you want to do an overlay on top of something completely separate, like the countdown, where, you know, you wanted something to go over top, or, you know, it's an overlay over top, it will either blend in with what it is, it will overwrite all the channel data and just come directly across, or, you know, different modes like that. Because that is one of those, the Matrix Tools plugin that I was talking about is one of the most helpful plugins if you're dealing in large, even projectors, that you can draw an X and Y to make sure that everything is set up correctly. So you just pull it up, X, Y, change the different colors, because your color order still is working in a virtual matrix. Because it's making pixels, it's like a virtual television, and so the color order has to match RGB, and all that has to flow through, or red will be blue and green and purple. Right? And then back over here, we don't have any plugins because we re-imaged them. I could plug one of mine back in, but I think this would be a good transition.